Hey everyone, welcome to the spike ball tutorial. Today we're going to be making a spike ball that is kind of stylized, kind of cartoony, almost like Mario or something on Nintendo. And what we're going to do is we're not actually going to create any textures for the spike ball. What we're going to do is we're going to control the color, the metallic, and the smoothness of each part of the spike ball through a shader. So it's kind of neat. It'll be yeah, I mean it's a super easy lesson. Beginners can follow along, no problem. We're going to be using Maya to model out the spike ball. You can also use Blender. We're going to be using Amplify Shader inside of Unity to create the shader, and you can also use the Unity shader graph. Everything should be very transferable, should be quite simple. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to start by creating the model. So we're going to start with a new empty project in Maya. Going to create a sphere. We're going to make this sphere, give it a radius of 100, which is 100 centimeters. So, that's equal to about 1 unit in Unity, which that's the units that I like to work with. So, that's personal preference thing. You do whatever you do you. So, with this sphere, we are going to do a couple things. First thing, we're going to create a sphere using quads instead of the sphere that Maya gives us. I like working with quads better. Plus, it's just a cool trick to learn for future projects. So let's start by doing that. Just going to make this view bigger. So we're going to create a cube, and let's just scale it up. You can just use your eyes for now. Um, make it a little bigger. And then we're just going to hit Mesh, Smooth, and we're going to hit G to smooth it again, and we're going to hit G to smooth it again. So I'm going to just grab it, and you'll see. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is line it up with the sphere. And then what we're going to do is, as you can see, the vertices aren't lined up in a spherical shape perfectly. But what we're going to do is we're going to grab all those vertices and we're going to sink them in to the sphere, which you see right here. So we're going to grab the sphere, then we're going to hold shift, and we're going to grab the quad mesh, and we're going to say mesh transfer attributes. We're going to want to make sure that vertex position is on, sample space is world, and everything else should be off. Everything looks good. Closest to point is fine. Hit transfer, and you'll see that the quad sphere gets kind of shrunk, and parts of it grow right into the actual sphere. So we're just going to find that sphere. We're going to delete it, and now we've got this quad sphere that's pretty perfectly round. There's a little bit of abnormalities, but it's looking pretty good. So easy step one. Step two is to create the spike, and we're also going to create kind of a rim around the spike, almost like a slot that the spikes come out of. They're not actually going to come in and out, but you still want to give that appearance. Just looks better. So let's create a spike. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just create a, so you can do this a couple ways. You can use a polygon cone, that's what I'm going to be using. You can also use a cylinder and then just shrink in the top for the spike, for the tip of the spike. That usually gets you some kind of vertical lines that don't really look that smooth. So I'm just going to use this polygon cone, and we're going to give it a radius. I don't know. Let's try 20 and a height of 20. It's not even close to spiky enough. Let's go with a height of 50 and a radius of 20. Actually, that looks pretty good. 50 and 20. We can pull it up a little bit. That's maybe a little too big now. Let's go 16 and 40. That looks a little better. Nice spike. All right. Um, so sink the spike in just a little bit by moving it, just so we don't see those edges. And then we can get rid of this bottom face here because we're not going to need it. So next thing we want to do is we want to create that ridge around the bottom of the spike, which I call the slot. You can call it whatever you want. So we're going to grab uh, our cut tool and, oh, just one sec. And it's not letting us cut along the edge here. I thought it would let us do a ring. Oh, I see why it's not. It's because all these tips touch and, okay, so you know what we should have done first. Give me one sec. It should be okay if we leave it as the size it was. So we just want a subdivision height of 2, and that's going to create this ring here, which is what we wanted to do with the cut tool, which apparently doesn't work correctly on a cone. So let's sink this down again. Let's grab this edge, and we're going to want to slide it. Okay, slide edge, and you just use your middle mouse button to slide it. So we're just going to slide it down to about, we'll say about right here. I'm going to go into face mode, select one face, shift double click to grab all the faces around it, and we're going to extrude these. Extrude it as far as you want. Let's go with 4. Okay, so that looks good, and we're going to want to grab the edges again. Select all these edges. We're going to want to slide them once more. So slide edge tool, grab the middle mouse button. Oh, that's way too much. There we go. So your slide tool is kind of finicky with I never know if it's like up or down or left or right or what. It's annoying. Okay, let's go with that. And let's grab this edge. We're just going to pull it up just to kind of meet. There we go, it looks good. And now the one other thing I notice is we kind of want an indent here. So let's grab all of these faces on this top ring. Let's extrude them. Extrude, and we'll pull them up a little bit. Kind of gives us that indent there. It looks a little better. And we're going to grab this edge, and we're going to slide it down a little bit as well. We could actually just get rid of it, I think. Yeah, let's try getting rid of it. Oops, just try to hit delete and see what happens. It didn't work because all the vertices are still there, but we can just get rid of these vertices as well. That gets a little annoying. Let's just go to a different view here. This view will work. Zoom out a bit. Maybe just get rid of all those vertices, that's fine. It gets rid of that edge, we don't need it. Just extra polygons and doesn't look as straight. So let's move it down, sink it into the ball. Perfect, so we got our first spike. Now, before we go and duplicate these spikes, we're gonna wanna do something else. We're gonna wanna UV map the spike first. That way we don't have to UV map a bunch of spikes, we can just UV map one. We could transfer the attributes later too, but this is just easier. So let's grab this. Let's go to Windows, UV Editor. I've got a shortcut set up for my own view, but this is a good way to get into it if you don't have any shortcuts set up. So what we're going to want to do is go UV and let's go automatic, and that's going to automatically slice our model into a bunch of usable UVs, but we're not going to keep it this way. Oh, and all my undoing, I forgot to get rid of this face. So let's get rid of this face right now. We don't need this bottom face here. Okay, so we're good. So first thing I want to do is, I'm just going to turn my texturing off because you probably won't have that. It's just something I have default with my Maya projects. We're going to want to say sew all the UVs together, and that's going to create this garbled mess of UVs, but that's okay. This allows us to go ahead and cut the UVs how we want to cut them. So let's make the first cut right along the Z axis here. So it's going to hit Z, or edge, sorry, double click, and it's going to create, so it's going to select from the tip here all the way down to this base, and we're going to cut. That's our first cut. Our second cut is going to be all of these edges right here. Sorry, it's hard to say if I got, yeah. So if you just double click this one edge, it should select that whole ring. We're going to cut that. So cut, and that should be all we need to do. Let's say object, and we're going to say, before we do anything, let's delete the history here. Sometimes that screws up UVs, so delete by type, history. We're also going to say modify, we're going to freeze the transformations, just in case we made any scaling, rotation, or position transformations here. Just reset them. So that's good. So now we're going to say modify, click layout, And if that doesn't work, it probably means that I have some settings wrong. So I'm just going to check this. So I want it to unfold 3D. Yes. I want to fix. Yeah, that's fine. Pack together. Yes. Stack similar. No, don't need to do that. You can do that if you want, but I'm not going to. This all looks fine. Translate shells looks fine. Layout UVs. Okay, if this doesn't work, I have this problem sometimes. Easy solution. Before you layout, hit unfold. Okay, that's how we want it to look. And then what layout does is it basically just, no, so it did it for me anyway. So we're good. But usually when you hit layout, what happens is it unfolds everything and then it lays it out nicely, depending on your settings. But for whatever reason, that wasn't working. Um, so now we have to place these UV maps. This is a really easy one to do because we're not worried about actually texturing this thing. We're more worried about giving different parts, different colors, and different attributes like metallic and shininess and smoothness and all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate this into quadrants, okay? And actually, before I do that, let's grab the ball and get it in here as well. So automatic, oh, so object mode, automatic, so that gives us this kind of thing. We don't want that. So I'm going to sew everything together and I'm going to make my own cuts. So edge, I'm just going to make it right along this edge here. That should be just fine. We just need that one cut. And we're going to say cut. Make sure that's selected, say unfold, and we get these two little kind of half spheres. Okay, so now if we select everything together, we can see that we have some layouting to do. Layouting, yeah, sure, that's the word. Grab the UV shell. I just want to put these two shells on the bottom. And remember, I said it was going to be quadrants, so we're just going to shrink those a little bit. The important thing here is, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a 0.5 here. We want our two sphere UVs to be below the 0.5 because we're going to use that value to separate that color from the other colors in our shader. And we want this one to be above 0.5, which isn't a problem, but we also want it to be to the left of this 0.5. So we do have to shrink it just a little bit. And a little bit more. That should be fine. As long as it's in that top left quadrant. And this one we need in the top right quadrant. And again, the ratios of these objects doesn't really matter because we're just setting colors and attributes. We're not actually applying a texture. So yeah, when you're texturing something, you want the ratio, like the ratio of the ball to the spike, you want it to be about the same as in 3D world space, because when you apply a texture, you don't want the spike to look super detailed and the ball to look, messy and pixely. You want them to look the same, right? So, but in this case, again, doesn't matter. So we've got these separated, we've got a ball here. Now we need to make the rest of the spikes. This is really easy. We already have one. We're just going to duplicate it and we're going to rotate it around. And then we're going to take the side ones and we're going to rotate them around. We're going to get this full ball of spikes. You'll see in just a sec here. So first thing we want to do is we want to rotate this around the center of the ball, right? So let's move our pivot. So hit D, and then the top here just goes 0, 0, 0. Make sure this is on absolute transform. And so that gives us the pivot right in the center. Then we're going to want to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, hold the push the square, and we're going to want to zero this out for now. So scale's fine, translate's fine, but we want each duplication to rotate a certain amount of degrees. We want 6 spikes to go around here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just like that. So we're going to, so 360 divided by 6 is 60. I'm going to put it in 60 right here on the Z. Okay, and we're going to copy. That's fine. We don't want to work with instances right now. We're just going to go with copy. Parent, that's fine. We're going to combine all this anyway. And we want 5 copies, right? Because we've already got our 1. So we just need 5 to make 5 more to make 6. So duplicate special. And sorry, I actually used the wrong axis. Should have been X, but it really doesn't matter. Like I said, we're going to be combining this all at the same time. we can actually get rid of these two. So I really could have just done 3, because what we're going to do now is we're going to select these, we're going to combine them, and with those combined, we're going to set the pivot to 0, and we're going to say, oh, so select that again, and we're going to say edit, uh, duplicate special, and we're going to say 0. We're going to go with 60 around the y-axis, so it goes this way, and hit apply. And just like that, we have our spike ball. Pretty cool. So let's close that, and well, here, I'll just show you. So if I select this, now it's all good in the UV. These all share the same UV, which is totally fine for this purpose. In some cases, you may want them to all be separate on the UV chart because you might want to give each spike different detail, but for the stylized look we're going with, it's not going to happen. We're just going with colors, metallic, and smoothness. So now that we have all of this, let's go and make sure we're in object mode, and let's hold shift and say combine, and now it's all one big object. Now, in your outliner, you'll see that you have all this extra crap here. We don't need that, so edit and delete by type, history, and it all goes away. Now we need to name this, so let's name it spike underscore ball, and we're ready to go into Unity. I'm not going to save this yet. I'll save it later, but let's send the selection to Unity. So I'm just going to find my workspace. This is the wrong game. I have a tutorial project set up, so I'm just going to throw it into the models there. Let's call it spike ball, hit enter. Don't worry about this warning, it just has to do with the texture that I'm using to test out UVs. Okay, so now let's go back into Unity. So I have a brand new scene.